Okay, last week I had recorded, or rather I'd posted, a video entitled My Literary Influences, and basically in that video I listed 4 writers of note whom I had presumed to make the most profound impact upon me and perhaps inform my own writing. Those writers being George Orwell, H.G. Wells, H.P. Lovecraft, and Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. About 2 days after that video was posted, I had uploaded a concomitant video called Great Writing from Great Writers, where I basically read portions of their work and then afterwards read something that I wrote and I suppose demonstrated how they had influenced me. Well, in My Literary Influences, that video, I did mention that I was going to make another video on why it is that I determined these people to be my influences. And that's what I intend to do here. There is this website called Why I Write, and I had found out about this through one Kate Kavanaugh, who's basically an author tuber, a writer who, I suppose, experiments with various writing routines from various famous authors of note. And in one instance, she actually tried to emulate the style of Neil Gaiman and had used this platform in order that she might be able to successfully confirm it. Long story short, it didn't give her Neil as a result. It gave her like Margaret Atwood or somebody like that. But nonetheless, this intrigued me. And essentially what this is it's a, like I said, a sort of a coding platform where you type in, the minimum is about maybe 5 lines of text of your writing, and basically you have it analyze what you've written, and once the analysis is complete, it basically gives you what it thinks you write like, gives you a famous author whom you supposedly are emblematic of, or you're supposedly similar to. And this obviously had me curious, so I decided to try this for myself, and I'll get into my initial, I suppose, go at it near the end, but I will demonstrate exactly why it is that I found all of my influences to be justified, all my claims for influences to be justified. So I'm going to be reading 4 portions of text that I had written that are excised from my current novel I'm writing. And I will go ahead and present you with who it is that this software thinks I write like. So, the first one is as follows. There may well be typos in this because, well, I'm a hopeless typist and I just do dictation, and sometimes it doesn't pick up on my accent. Anyhow, there is an ineffable majesty to the south that draws one's heart ceaselessly back to it, something primitive and untouchable, for it is by degrees a cold, vast, treacherous place which boasts environs injurious to man, yet a solemnity and order, it says in order there, but I meant and order, irresistible to him. Few are they who cling to it, and it's supposed to say fewer, but it says fearless. Fewer still who choose to do so. It is a place to be born and not to live. And it is this race, it says rice, but it's supposed to say race, who come most to resemble their forefather Adam. God bless the people of New Zealand, South Island, for it is in, it says isn't, but it's supposed to be is in, conditions merciless as theirs, where pullulates an invincible charity. Now, when I first wrote this down in my notebook, I didn't necessarily try to sound like anyone in particular. I was basically going about it with my own capabilities and in my own voice. And when I basically had the computer analyze this, I was not surprised at all what it came up with. And obviously the result was George Orwell. So there's influence number one. Number two is a bit shorter in terms of length, but nevertheless it does connote an influence here. It does merit one, rather, and I will go ahead and read this for you. Greymouth lay far to the south. This is from the same novel. Greymouth lay far to the south, and my position was already so hopeless as to throw me off of penetrating a deeper desolation. The authorities had, it says heard, but it's supposed to be had, by now renounced the case from memory. Myself now its sole inquisitor. Once again, not really trying to sound like anyone in particular, but when I did submit this, it did come up with H.G. Wells. So that's another one down. This one here is, now, I did actually intend to not plagiarize, but just, I suppose, mimic or, I don't know, somewhat emulate or maybe even be inspired by the final paragraph in section 1 of James Hogg's book, The Private Memoirs and Confessions of a Justified Sinner. And the section is the editor's narrative at the beginning of the book, and basically the end of the first of planned 6 parts to this novel goes thusly. That document, committed in its totality to a muddy ledger book, I present unto you, friends, for the purpose of your own perusal. On it no commentary from me will be given, nor will I pervert the integrity of the text with thoughtless excisions and modifications. The alteration of an anonymous anecdote is the desecration of a forgotten truth, and to tamper with evidence of this magnitude would count as forgery on my behalf. As to judgment, I trust that yours is sufficiently sound. My own I shall reserve as an afterword. In former eons, the ignominy of sin has been examined profusely, but nothing can surpass what is thusly written. Now, I don't believe that James Hogg is as well known a writer to merit mentioning or recognition from this site. So, in all honesty, I had no idea who it was going to come up with. But when I did submit this, it did come up with H.P. Lovecraft. Because this novel I'm working on, it started out as basically a satire of the publishing industry and also sort of a handbook on how to write well and achieve greatness in art, more specifically literature, and also was sort of a frank and unbiased meditation on Christianity and religion and all of that. But then it sort of transmogrified into an almost surreal mystery in the likes of Conan Doyle, but more specifically Lovecraft's The Call of Cthulhu. So I did expect that just a bit. I just wasn't aiming for that with this particular piece. So now we'll go to one last little piece here, just a short one. And I don't have any water, so I don't know why I did that. And I will read this off. This is also from that same novel. If what is written up to now has implanted anything into your head, it should be that ours is a useless lot, with suggestions that carry little weight, better suited for the squatter's life than the expansion and preservation of literature. Pristine we think our estimations, when our ignorance is inestimable. We excoriate and are ourselves excoriated. Sorry about that. So, not trying to sound like anyone in particular, but then when I submitted this, it came up with Arthur Conan Doyle, which is obvious. That's basically innate in me. So, that's basically how I determined those 4 influences. They kept coming up most often in the feed, and I had basically discerned them to be so because I had read them obviously over the years and had taken various elements from their writing and implemented them into mine and thought them apt, I suppose, as to count them as influences. Now, I did mention that there are some instances that genuinely surprised me when I did submit them to the website, and I will read those to you right now. I will read to you the very first go that I had at it, and this is actually from a short story that I'm currently reworking. It's a revision of the very first story I ever wrote called Egypticus, which is lost to the ether. I have no idea where it's at, but I want to try my best to actually rewrite it and make it into a great story. So I'll read to you the first paragraph of that. For years I presumed the workaday fancies of reality, devoid of even the most tenuous intimation of terror. Misfortune is far too regular a burden to consider with any modicum of seriousness. One may hear about the harrowing account of a lady accosted unhappily by the lecherous interloper, and from it feel a slight pain in his soul. But enough fanatical philanderers roam the continents as to make anyone agnostic to all emotions disparate from remorse. One may read of some distant, impervious war and be exasperated, yet a national despairs more over a trampled insect than what does not lie at his hand nor within his country. Indeed, one may voluntarily bivouac in total remoteness, intent on a primordial encounter, and by virtue of the gods get it. But so long as the assailant is known to his experience or creatural biology, he has a chance at holding his own in the inadvertent conflict. What is ingrained in reality can in effect be conquered, and in every charted space has horror been mercifully extinguished. Now this story, when I did write it a long time ago, I was very much inspired by Lovecraft. In fact, particularly the story Dagon, if you're familiar with that story. And I sort of wanted to imbue this with that similar spirit in mind. But what surprised me about this is when I submitted it, came up with Mary Shelley. Now, I've not read Mary Shelley really. I did mention in the Books That Changed My Life video, which is kind of out of date, I may well need to remake it, that the Last Man, of which I read only like 20 pages, was somehow pivotal. I can't really grasp any of it now. I don't remember at all what it was about. And I've not read Frankenstein. So I'm not entirely sure if this is at all accurate. So do let me know down in the comments if you think it is. This is an excerpt from my mystery novel that I had gotten about 60 pages into, but then had to stop off because my father had passed away and was much too grieved to continue with the work. By this point, I suppose the book itself was near great. What the kind of writing I was doing at the time could be considered very good to basically near great. This was about when I was 19 to 20. So I'll read this here. Treading, it's supposed to say, but it says trading comfortably, all were given a respectable view of the moon, that blessed gourmand, whose fingers now stretched down betwixt the trees, shedding light on a blooming paradise lost under the dark to their right, and to their left, it's supposed to say panoply, but it's penalty, whatever it is, of the dead. Bones of humans scattered about the forest as if thrown from a basket, among them a skull broken by what seemed, it says seemed, but it's supposed to be seemed, a bullet. And I typed that in, or submitted that, and it came up with James Fenimore Cooper, who is the author of the Leatherstocking Tales, which includes the very famous Last of the Mohicans. I've never read him, but in truth, when I was typing in these suggestions, it seemed as though that he, among my four major influences, seemed to be the most preponderant in my, I guess, style. I don't know exactly how you would say it, but so that's another case there. Here's another section from the novel I'm currently working on. Anyone who takes up this repugnant trade has no love for the Lord, even they who do so without the aim to arise. God's judgment is all-embracing and merciless, and he is unafraid to chastise they who know not what they do. And it came up with Leo Tolstoy, obviously the famous Russian who wrote War and Peace and Anna Karenina and a whole bunch of other stuff. I've only just read 100 pages of War and Peace, and I've fully read The Three Hermits, that one short story he did, which I remembered liking. So I was surprised by that quite a bit. Let's see. This is an extract from my one short story I read out on here, Cicadas or Cicadas. I bet you all remember that story. Winter has no home here, but summer, oh, that cruelest of seasons, all is reduced to kindling then. In the 3 short months the land is ravaged by conflagration as much as Australia on one day out of a bad year. Evidently, it came up with P.G. Wodehouse, the creator of Wooster and Jeeves, whom I've not read. Though, from my past experience in a short story writing college course, I was, in a sense, compared to Wodehouse. Not for my writing, per se, but just like the circumstances in which I happened to place my characters. I will talk about that at one point, I'm sure, but not now. This is the beginning of an untitled story. I've no idea where I'm going to put this, actually. It may well be the beginning of that story I told you about, in which there's a neighborhood where everyone evolves backwardly. This may well be the introduction to that. It is a good many years since the extraordinary and gratifying succession of events beget of my first acquaintance with Mr. Julian Almiron, and yet in this advanced stage of 60, the lucidity of some of them still refuse decay. And it came up with Jonathan Swift, who have not read... Actually, I've read A Modest Proposal by him, but I've not read Gulliver's Travels. So, I'll read one more piece of writing from here, and maybe you can get an idea as to just how disparate, yet at the same time how homogeneous some of these influences of mine, not influences, but some of these, I guess, implied influences are for me. And it comes from my very first attempt at a novel, which was, I suppose, a means of draining myself of my demons, as sort of a means of catharsis, after having spent a term with a very intolerable person. The book itself, I would call it a very good book. By no means is it great at all, but this section here may well be the only part of it that I myself consider to be in any way great, and that is here as follows. This is also some very turgid prose, because I was 17 or 18 at the time I wrote this, so do forgive the sort of incomprehensible and even wordy nature of what is written down here. What one never fully realizes about that transitory time of merriment known as summer is that while it effectively dulls from memory the imminently prerequisite events of a laborious year, it stimulates and thereby revivifies those that brood unseen in the mind, and particularly in the heart. It is these remembrances with which one is blighted for the lot of their lives, and which, though they themselves are ashamed to admit it, are in fact the most painful to recollect. From these, new emotions emerge, judgments that are mostly malignant, and anything, whether it be a frivolous utterance of an unnameable person or a paramount occurrence in histories either ancient or recent, could induce one to a state of preliminary apprehension and the revitalized pain within them, then ravenous for one's dwindling sanity. As you can see, I had the seeds of greatness even back then, but I didn't know exactly how to implement it. And when I did type it in or submit it, it came up with Fenimore Cooper. Given the fact that Fenimore Cooper comes up so much when doing an analysis of my own writing, makes me anxious to actually read the Leatherstocking Tales. I know Johnny Keane very much enjoyed it when he read it many years ago, but I myself am looking to start it. A few other implied influences that I have observed from this site are Edgar Allan Poe, Daniel Defoe, Vladimir Nabokov, Charles Dickens, and Bram Stoker and Jack London. So, if you ever get the chance to do so, by all means, go to the website I Write Like. Type in about maybe 4 or 5 lines or more of your work and see just who you sound like. And leave your, results down in the comments or make a response video of it. Okay, that's it.